There is a strange paradox in the human heart that becomes evident the moment you allow yourself to stand still and feel the pulse of the collective soul. People hunger for warmth, for affection, for recognition, yet they build walls of ice around themselves as if to protect something fragile. The colder they appear, the more they are guarding a trembling child within a memory of love that was lost or betrayed. To stay loving in a world that often turns its face away is not simply an act of kindness, it is an initiation, a descent into the underworld of the psyche, where one must learn to kindle the inner fire even when no one else dares to strike the first spark. When I speak of love, I do not mean the sentimental affection that the ego craves like a fleeting caress. I speak of something far older, something that emerges from the depth of the self, which is not the I you think you are, but the archetypal core of being. Love, in this sense, is an alchemical force, a dissolving fire that penetrates the coldness of the persona, the mask people wear to survive, and reaches the raw, unhealed essence beneath. To stay loving in the face of coldness is to refuse to be trapped by the collective shadow, to refuse to answer bitterness with bitterness, and instead to stand in the radiant, though often invisible, warmth of your own individuated soul. Coldness in others often awakens the shadow within you. A sharp word, a dismissive glance, a rejection. These are like keys that unlock the prison of your forgotten wounds. You feel the sting because you have felt it before, because somewhere in the labyrinths of your psyche, a voice whispers that you are not enough, that you will be abandoned if you dare to stay open. To remain loving, therefore, is not to deny your pain, but to embrace it, to face the archetypal reality of the wounded healer who, through their own suffering, learns to heal without hardening. Imagine for a moment that the coldness of others is not truly about you. Their icy demeanor is often a projection, a shadow that has nothing to do with your essence. In analytical psychology, projection is a powerful phenomenon, a trick of the psyche where the unowned aspects of the self are cast onto others. When someone is cold, they may be wrestling with their own inner frost, their fear of being hurt again, their terror of intimacy. If you meet their coldness with your own resentment, you have allowed their shadow to call forth yours. But if you remain rooted in your own inner warmth, you become a mirror, reflecting back not hostility, but the possibility of light. It is not easy. I will not pretend it is. The world has grown increasingly alienated, each individual carrying their private loneliness like a sacred wound. We live in an age of masks, where the persona has grown thick and glittering, while the true soul beneath withers for lack of authenticity. To stay loving in such a climate is to be radical, almost rebellious. It is to choose the path of the self over the path of the collective. It is to say, I will not let the coldness of this world define the warmth of my heart. This inner warmth is not mere emotion, it is consciousness itself. It is the flame of awareness that can see both light and shadow without becoming blinded by either. When you practice staying loving, you are in truth, cultivating an awareness that stretches beyond the personal. You are touching the archetype of the eternal lover, the divine energy that longs to unite what has been divided. Every act of love, even the smallest, is a movement toward wholeness. Every refusal to turn bitter is a quiet revolution against the unconsciousness of the world. But let us not be naive. Love does not mean submission. It does not mean tolerating abuse or silencing your boundaries. To stay loving is not to become a martyr for the cold-hearted. It is rather to know yourself so deeply that you no longer respond to the world from a place of woundedness. Love and strength are not opposites. They are two sides of the same coin. The individual who has individuated, who has met their shadow and made peace with it, carries within them a love that is fierce, a love that does not break even when it stands alone. There is an image that often appears in the dreams of those who are learning to navigate this path, the image of fire in the snow. It is a symbol of the eternal paradox of the human condition. The warmth of the soul amidst the coldness of the external world. The fire does not melt the snow completely, nor does the snow extinguish the fire. They coexist. And through their tension, something new is born. This is what it means to stay loving no matter how cold people are. You do not seek to change them, to melt the ice with the heat of your demand. You simply remain a living flame. And sometimes, without knowing it, your light will awaken a forgotten warmth in their own heart. The collective unconscious holds many images of love and coldness. Think of the myth of Persephone, abducted into the underworld, where the cold and shadow reign. Yet even there, she carries within her the seeds of spring, of renewal, or consider the image of Christ, who, nailed to the cross, looked upon those who mocked him with compassion rather than hatred. These archetypal stories are not meant to be worshipped as distant tales. They are mirrors of our own inner reality. They remind us that true love is forged not in the absence of suffering, but in its midst. When people are cold, they are often testing your reality, not consciously, perhaps, but the soul recognizes authenticity like a tuning fork. If your love is merely a facade, their coldness will shatter it. But if your love is real, if it flows from the deep well of the self, then their frost cannot extinguish it. It might even, paradoxically, cause them to glimpse the shadow they have denied. And this, more than anything, is the work of love, to hold up a mirror that is neither condemning nor flattering, but true. Do you see, then, that to stay loving is not a passive act? It requires courage, discernment, and a willingness to face your own shadow. You must ask yourself, why does this person's coldness hurt me? What old wound is being touched? What part of me longs for their approval, for their warmth? If you can stay present with these questions without running, without numbing yourself, you will find that your capacity for love expands. It is not about them. It never was. It is about you, about the fire that cannot be extinguished, about the self that knows it is whole. Even when the world is frozen, in my work, I have often encountered dreams where the dreamer is standing in a vast, cold landscape, perhaps a snowy field, or a frozen lake. At first, the dream is terrifying. for coldness is often associated with death, with isolation, but then in the distance, a light appears, a small fire. A kavin, a figure offering warmth. This is the psyche's way of saying that even in the most desolate places, love exists. It is never truly gone. It only hides beneath the layers of fear and forgetfulness. When you choose to stay loving, you become that cabin in someone's dream, that place of warmth they did not know. They were seeking. Staying loving is also an act of alchemy. In alchemy, the cold and the hot, the dark and the light, the masculine and the feminine, all opposites must be brought into union for the philosopher's stone to emerge. Likewise, when you meet coldness with warmth, you are performing a sacred union within yourself. You are integrating your own inner polarities. The part of you that wants to protect itself by withdrawing, and the part that longs to connect. Through this integration, your soul becomes stronger, more luminous. There is a danger, of course, in thinking that love is about changing others. The ego always wants to fix, to convert, to win. But true love is not an act of conquest. It is an act of presence. When you remain loving towards someone who is cold, you are not trying to melt their ice. You are simply standing as a witness to the possibility that warmth exists. Whether they awaken to it or not is not your burden to carry. Your task is to stay rooted in your own center, to let the archetype of the lover guide you. Even when the world feels unloving, there is a temptation to believe that love must always be returned, that it has value only when reflected back by another. But love, in its deepest form, is not a transaction. It does not wait for reciprocity. It is not diminished by the cold winds of rejection. Rather, its power is revealed most fully when it meets resistance, when it is tested by indifference, and yet remains unbroken. To love in such moments is to tap into something far beyond personal sentiment. It is to drink from the source of life itself, the archetypal wellspring from which all true connection flows. The psyche is a landscape of mirrors. What we see in others is often a reflection of what we have not yet seen in ourselves. When someone appears cold, perhaps they are merely holding up a mirror to the places within us where we too have turned to ice. We recoil from their coldness because it awakens an ancient memory of our own withdrawal, our own moments of shutting down to protect ourselves from pain. But here lies the great lesson. If we can recognize this mirror, if we can look at their coldness and not turn away, we can begin to thaw not only them but ourselves. For staying loving is not about conquering their frost. It is about melting the frozen places within our own soul. In the collective unconscious, coldness is often symbolized by images of death or stillness, the barren winter, the frozen river, the endless night. Yet these images do not signify destruction alone, they hold within them the seed of transformation. The winter is necessary for the spring to come. The frozen river will eventually flow again. The night prepares the soul for dawn. When you encounter the coldness of another, it may be an invitation to enter this symbolic winter, to endure a kind of inner death, a stripping away of illusions and demands, until what remains is pure, unconditioned love. We are afraid of being unloved because we mistake love for validation. We want to be seen, admired, cherished. And when that does not come, we believe something is wrong with us. But the love I speak of, the love that Jung's work always pointed toward, is not dependent on external approval. It is the love of the self as the eternal core that does not waver even when the world turns its back. When you stay loving despite the coldness around you, you are not just being kind, you are aligning with this eternal source. You are saying, I am more than my wounds. I am more than my need for recognition. I am whole. And my love flows not because of what I receive, but because of who I am. Consider the archetype of the mother, the eternal nurturer. The mother archetype is not sentimental. It is fierce, unrelenting in its capacity to give life even when the world is barren. There is a reason we associate warmth with the womb, with the hearth, with the fire of creation. To stay loving in the face of coldness is to embody this archetype in its higher form. It is to become a vessel through which life continues to flow, even when no one seems to notice. You do not give love because it is easy. You give it because it is your nature. Yet love without boundaries is not true love. If you confuse love with self-erasure, you will burn yourself out, leaving only ashes where the fire once was. True love requires discernment. It is the balance of eros and logos, of feeling and wisdom. When people are cold, you must ask yourself what is mine to hold and what is theirs to resolve. You can offer warmth without sacrificing your own fire. You can remain open without letting the frost consume your core. This is the subtle art of individuation, knowing where you end. And the other begins while still recognizing that both are part of a greater whole. Dreams often reveal how we navigate these dynamics. I have seen dreams where the dreamer stands before a frozen door, unable to enter, until they realize that the key is not in forcing the door open, but in warming their own hands. The door represents the other person's heart, and the coldness they perceive is not something they can control. But by tending to their own inner warmth, by nurturing their own soul, they discover that the door opens not because they demanded it, but because they radiated a presence that melted the ice without effort. There is something profoundly mystical about this process. The alchemists called it the secret fire, the hidden flame that burns within every human being, capable of transforming lead into gold. When you stay loving, especially when the world is cold, you are tending this secret fire. You are participating in an inner alchemy that changes not only your own heart, but the collective field of humanity. Every act of love, no matter how small, sends ripples through the unconscious, awakening archetypal forces that have long been dormant. Coldness, after all, is often a mask for fear. People withdraw, not because they are incapable of love, but because they are terrified of being heard, of being seen, of being vulnerable. If you can see through their coldness to the fear beneath, you will no longer take it personally. You will understand that their ice is a form of armor. And Armor always hides something fragile. To stay loving in the presence of such armor is to recognize that you, too, have worn it, and that beneath the armor lies the same longing, the same desire to be accepted as you truly are. This is why self-knowledge is essential. If you do not know your own shadow, if you are not aware of the parts of you that crave approval or fear rejection, then the coldness of others will control you. You will either chase their warmth desperately or harden yourself in retaliation. But if you have faced your shadow, if you have made peace with the fact that you too can be cold and afraid, then you are free. You no longer need their warmth to validate your own. You can stand as the fire in the snow, unshaken by the storms around you. The great danger of coldness is that it spreads. One icy word can create a ripple of resentment. One act of indifference can cause another to shut down. And soon the whole field is frozen. But love, too, spreads like fire. One warm gesture, one sincere word, one moment of compassion can ignite the flame in someone else. And before you know it, the ice begins to melt. To stay loving is to break the chain of coldness. It is to be the one who refuses to let the frost dictate the atmosphere. When I speak of love, I do not mean something soft or weak. True love is one of the most powerful forces in existence. It is the energy that binds the universe, that holds the opposites together in a dance of creation. Coldness tries to separate, to fragment, to isolate. Love unites, not by erasing differences, but by seeing the wholeness that exists beneath them. When you stay loving, you are standing with the archetype of unity against the archetype of division. You are choosing wholeness over fragmentation. Think of the sun. The sun does not withhold its light because some refuse to feel its warmth. It shines regardless because that is its nature. In the same way, when you have reached a certain stage of individuation, your love becomes like the sun. It is no longer dependent on external conditions. It radiates simply because that is what you are. The coldness of others cannot diminish it. Just as clouds cannot stop the sun from shining above them, your task is to remember this, to trust that your love is not a weakness, but a reflection of something eternal. There are moments, of course, when you will feel weary. To remain open-hearted in a world that can be indifferent or cruel is exhausting. You will be tempted to close off, to retreat, to say, why should I care when no one cares for me? But these moments of despair are also thresholds. They are invitations to go deeper, to find a love that is not based on ego or expectation, but on the recognition of a shared humanity. Even the coldest person you meet carries within them a divine spark. If you can see that spark, even faintly, you are already participating in the work of the self. And so, when you are confronted with coldness, do not ask, how can I make them love me? Ask instead, how can I stay true to the love within me? This shift of focus changes everything. It frees you from the tyranny of needing others to respond as you wish. it places the power back in your hands, or rather, in your heart. You become the source of the warmth you seek. And when you stand in this warmth, you will find that the coldness of others no longer defines your reality. You may even inspire them, though that is not your goal. There is a strange alchemy that occurs when you refuse to let the coldness of others dictate the climate of your soul. In those moments when you stay loving, you are no longer reacting from the fragile shell of your ego, but from the deep well of the self. The self is not swayed by temporary storms, for it knows that all things warmth and coldness, love and rejection are passing waves on the surface of something infinite. When you draw from this source, your love is no longer fragile. It becomes unshakable, a quiet force that does not depend on acknowledgement or return. But to reach this place, you must walk through the valley of your own shadow. You must face the parts of you that have learned to freeze in response to pain. Perhaps you remember a time when you gave your heart fully and were met with silence, when your warmth was not returned, but dismissed or even mocked. These memories leave marks, invisible scars that whisper, it is safer to be cold than to risk this again. And so, part of staying loving is to enter those memories, to hold them in your awareness, and to tell that wounded part of yourself, it is safe to love again, not because they will love me back, but because love is my nature. The dream world often speaks of this inner healing through symbolic landscapes. A person may dream of wandering through an icy forest, shivering, searching for shelter. They may stumble upon a small lantern or a hidden fire that refuses to be extinguished despite the snow. That fire is the eternal essence, the self's way of reminding the dreamer that love is never truly gone. It may flicker, it may be buried under layers of fear, but it is always there, waiting to be tended. When you wake from such a dream, you might feel a quiet resolve, a knowing that no matter how others act, your task is to keep that flame alive. Coldness, in its psychological sense, is often the result of unprocessed pain. People become distant when they are unable to face their own shadow, when they fear what might emerge if they open their hearts too widely. It is easier for them to wear a mask of indifference than to confront the vulnerability of their true feelings. But if you react to their coldness with anger or bitterness, you simply add another layer to the ice. The only force capable of melting such frost is the steady warmth of authenticity, a love that does not seek to control but to witness. However, this witnessing is not passive. It is an act of deep presence. To witness someone without judgment, even when they are cold, is to create a space where their own soul might thaw. It does not mean tolerating cruelty or denying your boundaries. Rather, it means seeing beyond the surface behavior to the soul beneath. You may walk away from someone's coldness if it harms you, but you can still hold them in love. This is one of the great paradoxes of the heart love. Can remain even when distance is necessary. Think of the archetype of the wise old man or woman, the guide who appears in myths and dreams to offer counsel. They do not always speak in words. Sometimes their presence alone, their calm and unwavering gaze, is enough to awaken something in the seeker. When you stay loving, even in silence, you embody this archetype. You become a clear teacher, not because you wish to instruct, but because your mere existence as a flame in the cold shows others another way. In my own work, I have seen how people transform when they feel truly seen. A man who spent years behind a mask of coldness suddenly weeps when he realizes that someone has perceived his true self beneath the armor. A woman who believed herself unworthy of love begins to soften when she encounters someone who offers her warmth without demand. These moments are not accidents. They are the result of a deep archetypal exchange where one soul holds space for another. And in that space, healing begins. But to hold this kind of space, you must first hold it for yourself. You cannot give to others what you deny to your own soul. If you are harsh with yourself, if you reject your own flaws and weaknesses, you will find it nearly impossible to remain loving toward the coldness of others. Your own inner critic will amplify their rejection, and you will feel wounded by every icy glance. This is why self-compassion is the foundation of all true love. When you have learned to love even the darkest corners of your psyche, the coldness of others will no longer freeze you. You will remain warm because your warmth does not come from them. There is another layer to this, a mystical dimension that the rational mind often overlooks. Love is not only a psychological force, it is spiritual. It is the thread that connects us to the divine, the energy that flows through all beings. When you choose to stay loving, you are aligning yourself with this greater flow, becoming a conduit for something far beyond your individual self. In those moments, you are not just a person responding to another person. You are the universe recognizing itself. The divine spark, acknowledging the divine spark in another. Yet the ego resists this truth. The ego wants love to be conditional, to be earned, to be given only when it feels safe. It says, why should I love them when they are cold? Why should I give when they give nothing? But the self whispers a different message. Love because you are love. Give because it is your nature. Shine because the world needs your light. Even if it does not say thank you. This is not an easy path. It requires courage, humility, and a willingness to let go of your own pride, but it is the only path that leads to true freedom. Freedom is found when you no longer need the world to be warm for you to remain warm. You become like a candle that burns even in the wind, like a hearth that glows even when the night is long. And in this freedom, you discover a profound joy, not a fleeting joy that comes from being praised or admired, but the steady, deep joy of knowing that you are aligned with your own essence. Nothing. And no one can take this from you. I've often said that the greatest journey a person can take is the journey inward into the depths of the unconscious. There, beneath the surface of your waking mind, lies a world of symbols, archetypes, and forgotten memories. This is where the real work of love begins, not with trying to change others, but with confronting the inner coldness, the parts of you that have learned to shut down. When you bring warmth to those places, when you allow your own heart to thaw, you will find that the outer world begins to change as well. Not because the people around you have transformed, but because you have this inner work is not solitary. Even if it feels that way, you are part of a collective field, a web of interconnected souls. Every time you choose love over bitterness, you send ripples through this field. You become a beacon for others, even those you will never meet. Your warmth touches the world in ways you cannot see. And perhaps one day, someone who is struggling in their own coldness will feel a strange, inexplicable comfort, a warmth that comes not from anything external, but from the invisible network of hearts that have chosen love. Coldness is not the enemy, it is a teacher. It forces you to ask what love truly is, what it means to remain open in a world that can be harsh. Without coldness, love would remain untested, a mere sentiment. But when love meets coldness and does not break, it becomes something else. It becomes wisdom. It becomes the quiet, enduring strength that knows how to endure winter, because it trusts that spring will come. There comes a moment, if you walk far enough along this path, when you realize that staying loving, no matter how cold people are, is not about them at all. It is about your own relationship with life, with the soul, with the mystery that moves through all things. The people who appear cold are like characters in a great dream, sent to test the resilience of your heart, to ask, will you close down when the world does not give you what you want? Or will you remain open? Because that openness is who you truly are. In this way, every encounter becomes a mirror, a leçon, an opportunity to deepen your connection to the self. When you choose to remain loving, you begin to feel the subtle shift in your own energy. The bitterness that once rose in your chest starts to dissolve, replaced by a quiet acceptance. This is not the acceptance of resignation or defeat, but of understanding. You understand that every soul is fighting its own hidden battles, carrying its own archetypal weight. Some are trapped in their shadows, some are drowning in their personas, and others are so afraid of the light within themselves that they reject the light in others. But your task is not to judge, it is to witness, to remain anchored in your own inner fire. The shadow, as I have taught, is not evil. It is simply the part of us we do not wish to see. When people are cold, often it is their shadow that is speaking, the neglected parts of themselves that have been pushed into darkness. If you respond to that shadow with your own, you only create more darkness. But if you remain loving, if you respond with presence and authenticity, something remarkable happens. Your light touches their shadow, not by force, but by simple recognition. And sometimes that is enough to awaken them. They may not show it immediately, they may even resist it. But at some level, the warmth you hold is felt, and it begins to stir something in them. This does not mean you must stay close to everyone. Sometimes staying loving means walking away without hatred. It means setting boundaries, not from anger, but from clarity. Love does not chain you to those who harm you. It frees you from the compulsion to match their coldness with your own. To remain loving is to remain free. It is to see that your warmth is not dependent on external conditions, and thus no one can truly take it from you. Imagine standing in a field of snow at night. The air is biting, the silence sharp in your hand. You hold a small candle. At first, you may think this candle is fragile, that the cold will snuff it out. But as you watch it burn, you realize something extraordinary. The colder the night, the brighter the flame seems to shine. It is not diminished by the cold. It is made more visible because of it. This is your love. It is not fragile. As you have been told, it is resilient, fierce in its kindness. It does not need applause or warmth in return. It simply burns because that is its nature. In the collective psyche, love is often symbolized by fire, by light, by the sun. And just as the sun shines on both the good and the wicked, on the warm and the cold, so too does true love refuse to discriminate. It does not choose who is worthy. It knows that all are worthy, though few realize it. This is the challenge to love, even when others seem unlovable. Not because you condone their behavior, but because you recognize that beneath their coldness lies the same divine spark that burns in you. We fear being taken advantage of being seen as weak if we stay loving, but true love is not weakness. It is strength of the highest order. It is easy to close your heart, to retreat into cynicism and bitterness. That requires no courage, but to remain open, to let your heart stay soft in a world that can be harsh. This is the work of a warrior of the soul. It is the path of individuation, for you cannot become whole if you reject the very force that unites all the fragments of the psyche. There will be moments when you falter, when the coldness of the world feels like too much. In these times, do not condemn yourself. Even the sun sets, even the fire dwindles before it is fed again. Love is not about perfection. It is about returning again and again to the flame. When you feel yourself growing cold, turn inward. Ask yourself, what part of you needs warmth? What part of you has been left out in the snow? By loving yourself, you replenish the fire, and only then can you share its light with others. The deeper truth is that love is not something you give or receive, it is something you are. The ego thinks in terms of exchange. If I love them, will they love me back? If I give, will I be given to? But the self knows that love is not a currency, it is a state of being. You do not shine because someone asks you to. You shine because you are made of light. And when you embody this truth, so the coldness of others no longer has power over you. Their frost cannot touch the flame that burns in the sanctuary of your soul. Think of the archetype of the hero's journey. The hero must often travel through the coldest, darkest places before they find the treasure they seek. The cold is part of the initiation. It tests their endurance, their faith, their heart. In the same way, the coldness you encounter in life is part of your own initiation. It asks, will you let this frost harden you, or will you become the fire that transforms it? Each time you choose love, you are taking another step towards the treasure, the realization that you are already whole, already enough, already luminous. There is a profound beauty in staying loving despite the coldness. It is a beauty that does not depend on outward appearances, but radiates from within, like the glow of embers in the dark. People may not always see it or appreciate it, but they will feel it. Your warmth will linger in their memory like a scent, like a song they cannot forget. Perhaps years from now, someone who once treated you with coldness will remember your kindness and feel a stirring of regret or gratitude. You may never know it, but your love will have planted a seed. This is how the psyche heals, not through grand gestures or sudden transformations, but through the quiet persistence of love, one warm moment after another, one refusal to become bitter, one silent choice to see the light in someone who has forgotten it. Over time, this creates ripples in the collective unconscious. It softens the rigid patterns, the frozen archetypes, and makes space for something new to emerge. In this way, your personal act of staying loving is not small. It is part of a greater work. Collective healing. Do not be surprised if your commitment to love makes others uncomfortable. People who have lived in coldness for too long may not know what to do with warmth. They may mistrust it, reject it, or try to test it. But do not let their reactions sway you. Your task is not to convince them or to prove your love. Your task is simply to be what you are, a flame, a presence, a witness to the deeper truth that no amount of coldness can destroy the essence of love. In the end, staying loving, no matter how cold people are, is not a technique or a strategy. It is a way of being. It is the path of the soul, so the choice to align with the self rather than the fleeting whims of the ego. It is a quiet revolution against the unconscious patterns that seek to divide and numb. And it is, above all, a gift not only to others but to yourself. For when you live in love, you live in alignment with your deepest nature. And this alignment brings a peace that no external condition can shake. So, I say to you, do not fear the coldness you encounter. Do not let it turn you into what you are not. Stand as the fire in the snow. Let your warmth be both a refuge and a light. And know that in staying loving, you are not only transforming your own life, you are helping to thaw the frozen heart of the world.